Zubin Mehenti, North Carolina went more than 2 hours with completing a pass. 2 hours of real time. We'll talk about the heels here in just a second. But guys, I want to get your thoughts on the poll. Tom, let's start with you. We did see 4 teams in the top 10 lose. It looks a little bit different. What are your thoughts?
Listen, I look at the new top 10, and I think all of those teams are deserving. I think you could put them in any particular order and feel like you've got a really good bunch there. I think you got to look further down the list to really start asking yourself some questions. Iowa State moves up 6 spots after beating an FCS school. And listen, it's a great FCS program in South Dakota. And I have a hard time believing that anybody who watched Florida State and Alabama and watched Auburn and Baylor thinks that Alabama is better than Auburn right now. And Auburn's sitting there receiving votes. So listen, it's highly debatable. We understand that. It's polarizing. But man, I thought there were a couple of surprises there.
Florida State has entered the chat. That's what stood out the most to me. This Florida State team that was 2-10 last season, but they had 8 new transfers starting on offense and a freshman, as well as Thomas Castellanos, who transferred over and dominated Alabama. It was impressive, not only the performance, but also now they're up to the top 15. We talked about them ranked in the 14th team, and I think that they're going to be a major challenge this year if they play the way that they played against Alabama.
All right, as we mentioned, the one team that's going to need a telescope to see the top 25 is North Carolina. So let's do the discussion there. Pete, I want to start with you. The football world was watching it last night. You had the privilege of being there in person. Just tell us, if you could, what the range of emotions was from that start to that third quarter finish and emptying out by the fourth quarter.
Well, Zubin, the vibes were electric. I can't overstate what a scene it was through the hour leading up to the game and through the first 7 or 8 minutes of the first quarter. I mean, North Carolina was concise and flawless on their opening offensive drive, and the crowd was buzzing. Michael Jordan was in the house. There was a lot happening, but unfortunately for North Carolina, Zubin, they're just not that good. And, going into the game, talking to scouts who are on the sideline, they have about 2 players who will be considered NFL draft picks. And one of those players, corner Marcus Allen, played poorly last night. What to me stood out the most once the game unfolded, Zubin, was this was just an indictment of the roster that Bill Belichick and Mike Lombardi put together. You don't pay Bill Belichick $11 million to not have a roster that can compete for the ACC championship. And I'm not saying that UNC is not going to win a game. They could certainly compete. They have a very easy schedule going forward, but you don't unfold this grand experiment to go to the Birmingham Bowl or the Fenway Bowl. And right now, just what is on the field from a pure talent perspective, no clear quarterback, no stars, issues on the offensive and defensive line, this is not a team that's an ACC contender.
Well, and the problem with that, Pete, is that we've made it far more about one individual than we have about the roster and the football team and the collective parts that are actually going to go on the field. Bill Belichick doesn't have any eligibility. And so now you start peeling back the layers. It's almost like having an expansion team without a draft, without a supplemental draft, free agency only, not a long training camp and no preseason games. And now you go out there and you're trying to figure out what you have. The bottom line is this: they've got to identify on tape who was doing what they were coached to do and who was not doing what they were coached to do. Who was playing effort, who is playing without effort, who's got some passion and some care about their play and the execution and the discipline it is going to take to be a good football team. And so there's a lot of work to do. And Bill Belichick's going to go right back to the tape and he's going to say, guys, we got to evaluate everything we're doing as coaches, as players, and reshuffle this roster if we need to and start going with guys that are going to do what we coach them to do.
Yeah, Lombardi, by the way, is making $1.5 million himself. He's the GM, as Pete said. I saw the eyes pop there. I'm with you, man. But you got the toughest question of all. Give me a silver lining to what you saw last night.
The one silver lining of North Carolina and how they played last night is that they may have just found their quarterback. Max Johnson came in the second half after quarterback transfer Gio Lopez got injured, and he looked like a seasoned veteran. Remember, last year Max Johnson won the starting quarterback position for North Carolina. He broke his leg in week 1, and that was really when North Carolina's season started to go downhill. They started a young player by the name of Jacoby Criswell, who didn't play so great. All of a sudden, Max Johnson goes through this quarterback competition. He he loses it, but when he got back in, he didn't miss a beat. So what stood out to me, outside of all the missed tackles, and really you could talk about poor play, but I would say poor coaching, was the fact that North Carolina may actually have an opportunity to compete with Max Johnson behind center.
Yes, all right. So if North Carolina fans this morning are wondering what's going on with their coach in a very small sample size, Alabama fans may be wondering the very same thing about their coach after what happened on Saturday. Again, Florida State coming off its worst season in 50 years. They won 2 games, and they have essentially gotten the last season's win total in half by taking out Alabama Saturday. And this has a lot of people talking about what we're going to see from Alabama moving forward. Look at this stat. Just look at this for 1 second. 4 losses for Kalen DeBoer against unranked opponents in 14 games. Nick Saban had 4 in his entire 17 seasons. Here's DeBoer with the best spin job he can offer.
These guys have already shown me yesterday how bad they want it and how they're going to respond. And so, you know, I really feel like the tone in the locker room after the game, at least from my standpoint, and how I can address the team is completely different than it was a year ago. It feels different. There's more of a, like, just flat out upset. Take care of business this week, and then that's going to set up the next week. And then we'll worry about that. That's been our philosophy all along, but we really got to live it now.
Okay, as I mentioned, Alabama with its lowest ranking in 17 years. They're sitting there at 21. They have ULM next. Sam, let's start with you. After watching Saturday, you really believe Alabama is going to get this sort of performance from everyone they face every Saturday this fall. Why is that?
Without a doubt, Kalen DeBoer has to understand that this is not Washington anymore. This is Alabama. And when you're at Alabama, a premier program, you're going to get everyone's best shot week in and week out. Back when I was at Texas, we were one of the top-ranked teams, went to a national championship. And every single week, it didn't matter if we played the best team in the nation or directional school from east to west, wherever, we were going to get their best shot. Why? Because they would go home and say, man, we beat Texas. Or in this case, man, we beat Alabama. You heard Thomas Castellano say that they don't have Nick Saban to save them. Then he backed it up and said, I don't see how they can stop me when I'm just watching the tape. Well, we watched the tape as well, and he was right. So no matter what, whether it's this year versus a Florida State team, last year versus Vanderbilt, Alabama's going to get everyone's best shot, especially when they see weakness.
Well, Sam, there's no question Florida State was ready to play with a chip on their shoulder. They were hot. They had the home crowd behind them. If you're Alabama, I think there's a few areas that you've got to be really concerned about. You got whipped in the trenches on both sides of the football. And defensively, I believe there's some effort, discipline, and execution issues that need to be addressed ASAP in terms of non-negotiables of what is going to be permitted to play defense at the University of Alabama. And that being said, we cannot discredit or discount how important the marriage of Thomas Castellanos and offensive coordinator Gus Malzahn was in week 1 versus Alabama. It was a masterclass in subterfuge, deception, window dressing, playing off of plays, and getting after it and utilizing the core fundamentals and techniques of Alabama's defense to gain an advantage. I thought it was unbelievable watching that tape yesterday to see just how good a job those two did for that offense.
And when you think about what's next, I think there's 2 things. Number 1, the team has to take ownership. There needs to be a bigger sense of urgency in practice. When a situation like this comes about, there's no more like, hey, we'll get it figured out. Like, the players have to take an ownership. Yes, it's the coach's team, but the best teams I've been a part of are player-led. That's part 1. And part 2, though they lost in an embarrassing fashion, you cannot discount Alabama just yet. Why? Go back to last year. Clemson got embarrassed week 1 versus Georgia. Well, fast forward, they still ended up making the college football playoff. And so the way that this thing does get turned around looking forward, it can't be about a coach or anybody else. The players have to take ownership for themselves.
Okay, one last thing. Remember, they were unranked in Saban's first year in 07. They beat Clemson in the 08 opener, and they stayed in the rankings for the next 16 years. Right now, they're sitting at 21. You heard Sam mention that Tommy Castellano said Nick couldn't save him back in the summer. He backed it up, and now you can back up a Venmo payment to get that right across your chest. Nick can't save him at TommyCastellanos.com. There's always a dollar to be made, and you better believe this day and age somebody will be making it. On a more serious note here, Pete, Alabama has much more serious concerns than just a loss. Looks like their best offensive player got a little nicked up. Give me the update here on Ryan Williams.
Yeah, Zubin, Alabama has been pretty banged up. We'll start with Ryan Williams. He suffered a concussion late in that Florida State game. Kalen DeBoer said he's day-to-day. Typically, when college players have concussions, they end up missing a game. We'll see what Alabama and Williams come to this weekend. Obviously, Wisconsin looms after Monroe, so that could be a logical target for Williams to come back. Along with Williams, guard Jayden Roberts, who's a starter on the offensive line, is expected back after he missed the opener with a concussion. Tim Keenum remains out, one of their star defensive tackles, and wide receiver Isaiah Horton is expected back. So a little bit of fortification for Alabama as they were missing some key guys last week.
Of course, Alabama lost to Florida State on Saturday. On Sunday, Noles linebacker Ethan Pritchard was shot in Havana, Florida, about 15 miles northwest of Tallahassee. What do you have on his condition and how he's doing?
Yeah, Zubin, obviously an awful situation down in Tallahassee. The latest from just a few minutes ago from talking to officials at Florida State is that Pritchard remains in critical but stable condition. Florida State had yesterday off as a team. They returned to practice this morning, obviously with heavy hearts. I've been told that a lot of the medical staff, the trainers and such, have spent a lot of time at the hospital with Pritchard and his family. Coach Mike Norvell was able to go over and visit with him a little bit recently. So obviously that has been central to this week for Florida State. The health of Pritchard is at the front of everybody's mind.
No doubt. Certainly hoping for the best for that young man. Thank you for that update. Still the program, Texas, the first #1 team to lose their opener since Miami did it back in 1990. Speaking to the Canes, they're at 5. And again, I want to emphasize Miami, Florida State, Florida, all in the top 15 for the first time since '06. They have been waiting in the Sunshine State for that for quite some time. Many people have been waiting for Arch for quite some time, but this wasn't exactly what they were waiting for. 37% off target rate. If you saw his first throw Saturday, you knew things weren't going to be getting too much better. But Arch, as you might expect, taking full responsibility.
I hold myself to a high standard. Recognize I got to play better. Got to lead more. Got to get our guys to play well around me. Ultimately, wasn't good enough, so yeah, I am hard on myself. Just starting faster, getting completions, getting to my guys in space, being consistent, and just operating the offense and executing each play at a time.
You know, it's amazing in the age of TikTok that message board culture is still a thing, and I wouldn't go on there if I was Arch on any of the Longhorn message boards. But Pete, let's start with you. Bottom line, you're saying there is no need to panic, so tell all those Texas message board fans that beg to differ with you why that is.
I don't know if I'm going to reason with the folks at Orange Bloods, but I will say this, Zubin. I was at Columbus on Saturday for that game. That was the most raucous I've seen Ohio Stadium in the 22 years I've been going to games there. I mean, it was an electric environment. And my biggest takeaway from Arch Manning's performance is that no matter what your last name is and no matter what your genetics are, he is still a human being. And he came out nervous, and he came out a little jumpy. He skipped that first ball, and he was just okay. The play calling, and certainly on the goal line and inside the 10, did not help him, and I think he's going to be just fine. So the coronation can end, and I think the logical, normal learning curve for a young starting quarterback can begin. He is certainly a promising prospect. He now just has to go prove it.
Look at my man Pete with some reasonable perspective. I'm with you, brother. And I also think that first throw of the game, I think it spooked Sark a little bit. And, you know, I've come to believe that Steve Sarkisian is one of the most masterful play callers in all of college football. But one of the reasons why he is because of all of the things he does pre-snap to create the best possible matchup for his quarterback. I thought he became a little bit vanilla. I thought he played conservative. This is an offense that generally has an epic screen game. There was really no semblance of that consistently. This was not all about Arch Manning. And to your point about the youth and inexperience, yes, he's played a couple of games. But what Matt Patricia did and what you do to young quarterbacks is you change the picture post-snap. And when that happened, it created hesitation and it forced Arch Manning to hold onto the ball a little longer than he'd want to. And then that leads to that off